So we are going to spend the next 50 minutes with 4 extraordinary artists. And the first 2 that I'm pleased to welcome to stage are the Brasil Guitar Duo. So please give them some love.
Very much. What is that? What should I do here? I don't know.
Just switch you on.
Oh. Hello. Hello, testing, sound. Good. Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon to all. We are very happy to be here. It's our second time in Detroit, actually. We played here almost 10 years ago. And we are really happy to come back as part of such an amazing convention as this Sphinx. It's an honor for us to be here. And we are really happy, although today is the official first day of the Carnival in Brazil, which is summer, but we still are really happy to be here. And try to share in a few minutes the experience we had over almost 20 years playing together and teaching and going to schools to outreach activities. Trying to tell you what we do. And what we do is very closely related to who we are, of course, and the choices we made in our musical careers, the instrument we play, and the country we come from. So the instrument, the guitar, for example, it's a kind of a paradoxical instrument because at the same time it's very easy to get an immediate result for the one that starts to play and he wants to make a sound. It doesn't require much of a knowledge or technical experience to play a chord. And so it's a kind of a very accessible instrument. And at the other hand, it's a very hard instrument, as any other instrument, with some or more difficulties than others, to achieve a mastering level. You know, to look at it as an instrument that requires a lot of practice to get a sonority, the technique, and to run away from that old story of accompanying with strumming chords, accompanying singers with the strumming chords, you know. So in my point of view, the guitar is a very effective and powerful access door, entrance door to the music world. And we take a lot of advantage of that when we go to schools and talk to children about music. Also, there's the fact that Brazil, the guitar is the instrument, the official instrument of Brazil is the guitar. Everybody plays the guitar. And like here, I guess, it's a little different because we use the nylon strings, not the steel strings at the folk guitar, which brings us a little closer to the classical guitar way of playing, the finger picking. So what we try to do, what we've been doing as performers, we started to play folk music, popular music from Brazil, the samba, the choro, the music that is played on the guitar. And it's a different approach that these players, they have to the guitar. They are not worried about the discipline, about the precision, about the cleanness in the sound. So what we try to do since we started to play as a duo is to bring this music from, I don't want to say the streets of Brazil, but from the regional culture of Brazil to the classical guitar universe. And also the other way around, when we play the classical repertoire for schools, for kids, for example, a transcription of a sonata by Rameau, Philippe Rameau for harpsichord, we bring this whole different universe closer to the kids that are used to see their parents playing the guitar and singing with a group of friends. So it's a very interesting mix what the Brazilian music, the Brazilian guitar can do and can act as a bridge between these two universes, if at all they are separated, but at least you can see some factors that distinguishes the popular music and how you say, the concert music, the classical music. Yeah? Complementa aí. So we played a tango by Astor Piazzolla. And why, please explain to us, why did we choose this piece?
So, the two guitars repertoire, as you can imagine, is not that big. It's not like compared to piano or strings. So we have to adapt a lot of music. We have to transcribe music from mainly harpsichord and piano. It works really well because each one of us like does one hand of the pianist or harpsichordist. It works very well, music from harpsichord or piano on two guitars. So being the repertoire very small, we need to adapt music. And also thinking that the guitar is we understand the guitar as being like a bridge between classical and popular music. We wanted to play this composer, Argentinian composer Astor Piazzolla, because we also think Piazzolla is very, let's say, approachable for any kind of audience. And on his music, we can hear elements from classical, from pop music, from folk music from Argentina, and it's basically what we're trying to do as a duo. Not being labeled just as classical like musicians, but play the music we believe it's like the right music, like sending a message through what we do. And the other thing I was gonna say, since we come from popular music and we have like we approach, since we studied classical guitar, the way we approach popular music is a little different than a popular musician would do, as Douglas pointed out, because it's not that they don't have technique, but they don't have, like they care for other things in the performance. While we have to like put a metronome to practice, and then we care a lot about sound, about like the way we use a vibrato in a particular note. So that makes the kind of like popular music sound more refined in a way. And that's what we kind of like, it's being our like main mission to play classical and music from Brazil, music from Latin America, but within this kind of frame, this like, we take a lot of care about the sound, the presentation of the piece. That's why we choose Piazzolla, because he's also kind of like a bridge composer, if you will, that works like perfectly for our purposes.
And it's very funny because, of course, that we are from Brazil. The tango is from Argentina, and when we play the tango, we put, of course, a Brazilian element into it, as well as when we're going to play music from the Renaissance or Baroque music, or even romantic music for piano. There's always the personality element, and in our case, I think there's this factor of the guitar of the Brazilian music that it's there in both sides. As João was saying, bringing the popular music to a little more constrained parameter of doing, okay, let's be very careful with this phrasing, because this is an oral tradition originally. People don't read music to play this kind of music in Brazil, the choro, the samba. So we bring that, and we try to do the other way around. And it's been really rewarding when we go to schools, principally here in America. Because unfortunately in Brazil, things are not going so well. And when you talk about education, principally. So it's very rare that a school can bring an international artist to play and to show a little bit of a different musical universe to them.
And even on private schools, because we both attended private schools, and I don't think we ever had like opportunity to like hear a guitarist come into our school or any kind of like professional musician.
Yeah, it was very, very rare, But when we go here and we go to the outreach activities, once we went to Alaska and we did a tour in Alaska for 20 days. And of course, we went to Anchorage and Fairbanks, but then we went to very remote little towns. And these kids there, a week before, the teachers, they prepared these kids. Oh, this is, they're from Brazil. Where is Brazil? Oh, what is the music? And when we got there, it was something that was really touching. You know, there was little signs and flags, and they knew everything about it. We could work with basic rhythmic cells with them. And maybe because of the nature of Brazilian music that is very often very happy, very up-tempo, it was a lot of fun to everyone. And that's what we've been trying to do, to bring our baggage of this popular music from Brazil, which is one of the richest in the whole world because the extent of the country and the different...
The variety.
The variety. It's a huge variety. And the complexity of it is also something very remarkable. Right? As something kind of as a mission, you can say. I don't know.
And just to like complement, like just as a final thought, we take a lot of advantage of the way we look, because it really connects to the students, because you can, like, a lot of people, if you're not a musician, you don't expect the guitar to play classical music, and then when you see like a black guy, we both have dreadlocks, and we don't always dress
Rastafari.
So it really connects with people. It doesn't matter if we're gonna play Rameau or Villalobos or Piazzolla, they connect right away because of the instrument playing classical music. It's not like a violin, it's a guitar, and the way we look. They see, oh, I can do that, you know?
Demystifying the classical guitar.
To expand, right? Yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you.
Terrific. We're going to do a super quick changeover. I think, oops, sorry, I'm exactly in the way. How are you doing? I'm just going to sit in your lap if that's okay. All right, thank you. And then we have an extraordinary person coming up next, someone that I actually got to meet a year and a half ago at Americans for the Arts, and is going to share a little bit of many of her gifts with you, tell you a little bit about her story, and share a little bit of her art. So please join me in giving a really, really warm welcome to mezzo-soprano Carla Dirlikov-Canales.
Good afternoon. It's such an honor for me to be here today. I'm a Michigander, and as such, I'm very, very proud of my state and of this organization. I want to talk to you a little bit about something that I find difficult to put into words, but extremely important to think about as an artist and as an audience member. I find that I spend a lot of my time trying to examine what makes a performance special. And I wonder if it's something that you all have thought of, and in doing so, what kinds of tools can we use to measure the magic of a performance? I'll tell you a story. A few years ago, I was doing a production of Carmen in Spain, and I was working with a Spanish stage director. Go into the rehearsals, and he says to me, "Eso necesita más duende." I said, "Well, what's duende?" And I didn't quite want to show my ignorance on the subject, so I went home and, of course, turned to Google, where I hope to find all answers to these kinds of questions. And I Googled duende, and I see it's defined as the mysterious power that we all feel, but no philosopher can explain. It's described as something that's intrinsic to an artistic experience. It's primal, it's visceral, it's about authenticity, and not about perfect technique or skill. Really, rather, it's about that attraction that we feel to a performer. And it's a concept that was really defined by Federico Garcia Lorca, who composed the song that we just heard. Federico Garcia Lorca was one of the great thinkers of Spain. He was a philosopher, but he was mostly known as a playwright and a poet, and of course, a composer. So he takes this concept and talks about how, in order to find the magic as a performer, you have to struggle to find the duende. Well, I was captivated by this tool. How many of you, just out of curiosity, have ever heard of duende? Great, great. I know for me, when I heard of it, I thought this is something I really want to explore. And the more I did, and the more I continue to do so, I tried to put it into English. The closest word I could find is soul. So for me, singing has always been something that I felt feeds my soul. I began singing probably because I was very mesmerized by the duende of a character we all know, Carmen. When I was a little girl, growing up in Ypsilanti, Michigan, I would put on the Zeffirelli production on the VHS back then, and I was mesmerized. She had some inexplicable power, a duende, that captured my heart and my soul. And I would dress one brother up as the bullfighter and the other as the bull. And I, of course, would want to play Carmen. This was my experience growing up here, which was perhaps unusual. My mother is Mexican. My father is Bulgarian. And so I felt I was born into this state of cultural confusion. I had two cultures to learn about, and a new one, that of being an American, to really study, and that mostly that was done through school. So I had to become a bit of a chameleon. And I had to learn to adapt to all of them while facing questions of identity. This was particularly noticeable for me in language. My father taught me Bulgarian, my mother taught me Spanish, and my job was to translate back and forth. So, for instance, my mom would say, "Go tell Dad, dinner's ready," and I would go and tell my father in Spanish that dinner was ready, or in Bulgarian, and he would give me a reply in Bulgarian from my mother, which I would tell her in Spanish. And I became very, very aware that there are things we cannot put into words. Those are perhaps related to intention, and more so related to emotion. And for me, music is the vehicle that takes us to those places of the things we cannot put into words. I was drawn to opera primarily for two reasons. One, the beauty of the voice. This is a craft where we really strive to make beautiful tone, but we strive to do so without microphones. So being able to produce a powerful voice, a sound that can carry over an orchestra and over a chorus is also a big part of it. People may mock the implausible plots of opera, I know, but that's not the point. The reason that opera is important and relevant today more than ever is because the stories of opera explore the peaks and the abysses of the human experience. So, I find myself now with the training of an opera singer, the training of, let's say, an interpreter. And it's brought me to see things that I never imagined I would see when I was a girl growing up in Ypsilanti, and to singing a role that I love in 12 countries and really wonderful opportunities. But I realized something very important. When I first began my journey as a musician, I was enamored by the sound and the craft and the beauty. And now I've changed. I'm now motivated by helping people and trying to make the world a better place. So I feel that I'm at a point where I have trained as an interpreter, but I'm beginning a journey, hopefully, to becoming an artist. See, to me, artists are the ones that ask the big questions. We're the ones that face the mysterious and the concepts, perhaps philosophical, such as duende, of things we can't put into words. I think of artists as being the warriors of what's important to our humanity. We're also the dreamers. And we're the angels, we're the vessels. We safeguard those things that relate to the soul. So here I am in the middle of this pivotal moment, and I return to those questions of identity. Where do I fit in as a Bulgarian Mexican born in America? And the more that I've thought about these concepts, and as much as I value my heritage, and I feel it's extremely important for all of us to learn about our backgrounds, I've realized another important thing, which is we are all one. I've spent most of my life checking the other box on the surveys, and I think our country is at a pivotal moment right now, and I think that the artist's voice is critical. Statistically, in 2014, this was the first year that children 5 and under, the minority was the majority. And when we look out to the projected statistics of 2020, that will be the case for everybody 18 and under. And we look out to 2035, and we will be at the turning point where the other will be the all. Something to think about, certainly. And as we think about these big questions that we're facing, whether we are a citizen of the world, a citizen of Michigan, an artist, or any profession you may have, I think that the quality of the questions that we are asking is what's most important. I know for me on my journey, this is what's changed. And the only, perhaps, measure of any success or progress that I can wrap my mind around is the quality of the questions that I'm currently faced with. So today, I'd like to end by asking you a question. When I typically meet someone, I ask, "How are you?" But I'd like to ask you, how is your soul? Thank you.
Carla Dirlikov Canales and her accompanist Justin Snyder. Please give it up for them. That was awesome. That was totally fabulous. Great. There's still seats up front if there's anyone in the back who wants to sit. This next one is not interactive. Don't worry. Come on up. All right. So to round out the extraordinary artists, please join me in helping to welcome an extraordinary violinist, Kelly Hall-Tompkins.
Thank you. I'm going to do things a little bit differently this afternoon. So when I was in the 2nd grade, I won my school's art contest for a painting that I did. If we can go ahead and put on my first slide. Great. So that's not it. So I won this art contest at my school, and the prize for that contest was a year's worth of art supplies. These became some of my most prized possessions. And I decided one day that I was going to sketch my house. So I sat in front of my house, and I opened the big sketch pad, and I started to work. And when I looked down at what I had done, it was pretty much like that. A typical child's drawing of a house. I shook my head. I was like, no, no, no. That's not what my house actually looks like. Why don't I draw what I really see? And so I did that, and it came out something more like that. That's not my drawing either, but you know what I mean. So it came out more like that. So despite what was sitting right in front of me, I was prepared to operate under the notion that there was only one way to draw a house. That was an aha moment and a lesson that I have taken with me throughout my life and I've had to revisit. Because despite what was sitting right in front of me, I was prepared to operate under the notion that there was only one way to draw, say, a career. And fortunately, I learned how to turn the page and draw what I see. So I would like to share with you 3 projects where I feel like I turned the page and drew what I see. The first one of those, despite conventional wisdom about what it means to release a proper classical recording, and I've done 2 of those, for the third one, I went completely off the deep end. I decided I want to record music videos. A bit of background information on that. In 2004, it stayed with me, this article that I read in Newsweek magazine, talking about the recorded music industry. It said that although classical music made up only 4% of all recorded music sales, at that time it was actually experiencing the highest growth across all genres, 22%. Now, why was this? This was because in the digital sphere, there was no more limited shelf space. Plethora of artists, plethora of recordings, no problem, room for them all. And also classical music buyers are niche buyers. We buy multiple recordings of the same work for collection, for compare and contrast. And also, suddenly, iTunes was this open field where the top-selling albums across all genres were featured. So that meant for the first time you had Lang Lang playing Rachmaninoff and Jay-Z on the same main page of iTunes. And because of that, there was apparently this new crop of buyer that was now listening to, would buy a track of Jay-Z and a track of Rachmaninoff, and they were listening to it on the same playlist. So this kind of went in my back burner. Meanwhile, I was part of the MTV generation when they actually did music videos, and I loved those. I loved music videos. And I'm the player that brings the music to life. I love visual imagery. I'm very visually oriented, as you can see. And so I thought, why not combine all this stuff? And so I hired a cinematographer and created music videos. Now, my version of mixing up genres was that I was really influenced to show contrast in my playing. So I recorded a big virtuoso violin solo piece, and then I coupled it with my jazz arrangement from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, Pure Imagination. So I will let you discover the Willy Wonka sometime on your own, but I would like to share with you my Izai, a little bit from my Izai performance. It goes on like that for 8 minutes. Thank you. Thank you. So I interviewed over 20 publicists, and almost none of them, almost all of them declined to work with me because they didn't catch what I was trying to do. They didn't catch the vision. Well, fortunately, the public did. And I'm really proud to say that I have nearly 1 million views on that project. And I also reached one of my goals, which is to reach diverse audiences, both connoisseurs of classical music and neophytes of classical music from around the world. And as you can see, this is a 30-day snapshot from last year. It's the pie charts. But as you can see, a lot of the views come from Latin America, which I'm very proud of. And just, it's very international, and it's been a very successful project. So, project number 2. Speaking of audiences, despite, oh yes, and of course the press did also pay attention, which I feel very good about, despite having such difficulty telling the story in the beginning. Project number 2, speaking of audiences, and despite conventional wisdom about who does and who does not like classical music, I created Music Kitchen Food for the Soul to bring top artists in concert in homeless shelters. This is the 10th year of my organization. I've presented 80 concerts to date, over 150 artists, and reached an estimated 14,000 homeless shelter clients. I've been able to present artists such as Albrecht Meyer, the principal oboist of the Berlin Philharmonic, Emmanuel Axe, who's a very, very passionate proponent of my program. It's him signing autographs. And Glenn Dicterow, my former teacher and the former concertmaster of the New York Philharmonic, when he moved to Los Angeles, he wanted to get involved in the program, so I created a new branch in Los Angeles just for him. And the Brasil Guitar Duo, who you heard earlier. Ritz chamber players, and Mark O'Connor, and the list goes on and on. You know, I find it really interesting, before we get to talking about losing classical music audiences, I mean, I realize that my organization doesn't have the burden of ticket sales, but what it does show is that there are people that are passionately interested in this music, and if given the opportunity, they will fall for it, just like many of us did. And also, I noticed that the artists get something from playing for Music Kitchen that they don't get from playing their own concerts. All of us do. There's a joy and a deep resonance, and look at that smile. When I see that, it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me doing this program. This encore performance of the Stravinsky Soldier's Tale, I must mention, was made possible due to a Sphinx Empower grant. And, you know, there's nothing quite like playing a Brahms sextet anywhere, for any audience, anywhere, and have them receive it as if it were the last point in the Super Bowl. I can't tell you what that's like. But that is, in fact, what happened. And that stays with me. And again, the press took notice, and I'm really proud of the fact that they noticed that there's something going on there that doesn't always happen in concert halls, and the New York Times took note of that. So project number 3. Despite conventional wisdom about what is and what is not appropriate for a proper classical violinist to do, when Broadway called, I said yes. And I am the violin soloist for Fiddler on the Roof on Broadway. And by accepting that, it is one of the most creative projects of my entire career to date. Not exactly what I was expecting, but Ted Sperling, the music director and also orchestrator, created additional solos that are typically in the score just for me. And by creating that, I've had the opportunity to have a voice in the history of this show. I've also had the opportunity to play for more audiences than I ever have in my career. I think it's 12,000 people a week, and very, very diverse audiences. And also being recognized for my work. I'm the player that brings the music to life, and the New York Times said exactly that about my performance, and it's really very exciting. You know, I'm reading this biography about Frederick Law Olmsted. He's the gentleman that designed Central Park, and also his son designed Fort Tryon Park, which is near where I live. And Frederick Law Olmsted, when he was trying to find himself, had so many jobs. He was a sailor, a farmer, an abolitionist, a writer, an editor, like a journalist, all these things. And Justin Martin writes in the book, he couldn't have known it at the time, but every single one of those things went into what he became as the landscape architect, America's first landscape architect. I would say the same thing about myself. I've been a section violinist, a concert master, a chamber musician. I've played fiddle music, I've played jazz, a little bit, and all these different genres of music. I've played Hollywood film scores, and all of it is what I draw from now in this role for Fiddler on the Roof. So I just would like to leave you with one thought. The new music director that was announced of the New York Philharmonic, Jaap van Zweden, was quoted as saying, the biggest risk for a musician, and I would say for anybody, but the biggest risk for a musician is to take no risk at all. So I say, go against the grain, take a risk, ignite yourself to action, and draw what you see. Thank you.